Hi everyone, in this video I want to talk about why I made some really dark posts regarding betrayal trauma or relationship that have some toxic dynamics unfolding in them, because this is also an important part of balancing our spiritual and earthly lives. Those who in fact want to awaken to the spiritual aspects and elements in their life in fact end up usually undergoing harsher and darker life experiences related to betrayals or toxic and abusive relationships sometimes, because in those experiences are hidden the kernel of what can manifest in them and in their life if they awaken the spirituality and spiritual teachings from their darker experiences, which takes a while for any one of us to understand and awaken to. And all of us are on a different awakening timeline journey. So depending on how much we are able to learn, accept, understand the higher purpose of some dark experiences of our past or even present, that determines how much we will evolve or awaken to the next level of our evolution and life journey and soul journey on earth. That's why some of these people who are undergoing these betrayal traumas that I've posted in some of my past videos, if you check on those videos, they really have some very cruel family life or cruel social support groups, or something happened in their life that led to people becoming cruel, abusive, or misunderstanding them, right? And in most of these times, if we are nice, kind, balanced souls, and all of us are actually at the soul level like that, but when we realize that I am a balanced soul and I'm a good soul, why is this happening to me? Many a times what happens is we get stuck in the victimhood of it. We start thinking that we are victims of our circumstances or of the people and places where we are bound together by social systems or family rules, or something that is binding us to stay stuck in a toxic, abusive, betrayal, trauma led life situation or a complex set of life situations with someone. And for many children or adults who are undergoing covert abuse, narcissistic abuse, and deep betrayal traumas where they didn't even realize that this narcissistic abuse or trauma was going on in the background for them it is something that doesn't come into their realization until many harsh things related to abuse manifested in their life repeatedly for a while. Then only someone who is really getting covertly abused in many ways finally wakes up that covert abuse was happening to them. But why would a soul choose such a toxic path with another soul? The thing is, when we were born, many people who are into spirituality might know all these concepts already, and those who don't know, for them I would like to explain this concept that every soul has chosen before their birth who are the other souls they will meet when they come on earth, who will be their friends, family, colleagues, people who live in the same community as them, people who follow the same religion as them, people who they might meet online, because right now it's the world of digital age, so you might even meet some souls online as well. So all these different kinds of people and social groups that one would interact with at the soul level, we have chosen a life path where we will briefly or for a long term or for a moderate amount of time be interacting with them. And this soul path, even though our soul path has a optimal plan where there is a best case scenario that can unfold with each of these souls that we meet, in order for the best case scenario to unfold with any soul we meet, they also have to be in that enlightened level that they are also wishing for a best case scenario to unfold for you, with you and for you, right? Both of us have to do that. We have to want a beautiful scenario to unfold with another, and for them and with them. Then only when we meet someone briefly also, that brief interaction can expand into a long term beautiful interaction with them. But if both sides are not awakened to the same needs, or don't value and prioritize and see why they were meeting this other soul in their certain time point in their life journey, if they don't see the value and worth of another human being, then their interaction with them will end up being brief or fractured or conflict ridden, or will eventually break down when their paths are not merging at all, or when the paths that were supposed to merge with them have now dissolved because both sides couldn't figure out how to merge each other's good, bad, light, dark, shadow, everything that needs to be merged between two people in order for them to share some joint life experiences together. Sometimes your joint life experiences, because you have all of us have come to experience certain life experiences, so we can have joint life experiences as friends, but our friendships can be short term 1-2 year friendship, long term decades of friendship, right? Our friendships could be medium level 5-10 years friendship, which eventually breaks down when after we have grown up, or after we have shifted our life direction, our paths are not merging again. Our same way relationships also, we can have lifelong family relationships with people. We can also have family members with whom it is not possible after even 10-20 years of knowing them to merge lives with them, because their life path choices and journey are taking them in a direction where you can't go, or you are going in a direction where they can't come, because you have diverged in the way in which you look at life, way in which you want to lead life, way in which even if for 10 years your life paths merged for a while, now it's not merging anymore. So these are the reasons why sometimes people have these betrayal traumas, toxic and abusive relationships, because at every time point when a relationship which was maybe just mildly conflict ridden suddenly gets into the abusive zone, it means that we are not able to merge life paths with them anymore, or they are not able to merge life paths with us anymore, or both sides are unable or unwilling to do that. That is when something which was mildly or moderately conflict ridden, or something that could have worked by people coexisting with each other, with occasionally meeting each other, occasionally being there in each other's lives, that thing falls apart, and now that occasional meetup also isn't possible. That life path dissolves when people are not going only in the same journey. Like, say I am in the middle of India, in a city like Indore, which is somewhat in the central part of India, so geographically. So now if we are both living in Indore, and one friend wants to go and live in Calcutta, and the other friend wants to go and live in Mumbai, and both of them have set up these great life plans ahead of them, one to go and live in Calcutta, one to go and live in Mumbai, can they ever merge and again come back to live in Indore? Yes. When in the future they might think about wanting to get back together with each other, or wanting to live in Indore with each other, then only it will join. Or when they are but if their life path currently has no avenues where they will ever want to come back to Indore, can they again merge back in Indore? No, because that life plan is gone then. Even if for 10, 20, 30 years you were best friends with each other, if one wants to go to Calcutta, another wants to go to Mumbai, and both of them don't have plans to come back and revisit Indore, both of them don't have plans to revisit Indore at the same time, your life paths will not merge. Like, I literally had this kind of a experience with my friends when one friend got married to someone and moved to Netherlands while I went to US for foreign studies. Now this girl liked keeping in touch with every person in the friend group, so she was very friendly and she always used to keep in touch with everyone. But even though and she used to keep in touch with me as well, but I am a little bit less socially active person, so I like being socially active, but I also like my privacy. So because I love my privacy, I was not always so much in contact with everyone. But invariably it always used to happen, even though we were never even best friends in college days, we were just in part of the same group that hung around together. Despite that, it so many times it happened that every time I'm traveling from US to India, she was also invariably traveling from Netherlands to India, and both of us would coincidentally, out of like say 8 trips I made to India, I don't remember how many trips I had made to India, I'm giving a random number right now, but say I made 8 trips to India from US in the 13 years I lived there. In those 8 trips, invariably 50% of those trips, her and my trips coincided in India. Invariably, even without speaking to each other, I would only speak to her once a year, or sometimes even less, once in every 2 years. Despite that, our journey was meant to merge, and we also had an interest in meeting each other. That's why we not only landed up in the same city at the same time in the same month or few same weeks of time during our vacation. Like, I would take 3 week vacation, she would take maybe 1 month vacation, and invariably 1-2 weeks of our vacation time would be coinciding. And out of that also, even though our vacation time was coinciding, even though we were both in the same city, again, if we didn't have the willingness to merge our life paths with each other, we would never have even met for a brief 1 day, few hours of friendship related, just gossiping with each other, catching up with each other. We wouldn't even have done that. But because our paths were meant to merge, it merged. Whereas there have been so many times I have met so many other friends who have come to the same city as me, again like this girl only, like just the difference was I lived in US for 13 years, she lived in US for only few months. We both grew up in India in the same city for many decades together, but after school and college, we were not keeping as much as in touch, or we were keeping like this only once a year, once in a couple of years, making phone calls with each other. Her parents also lived in the same city as me. So when I came to visit India from US, and she is coming to visit her parents from her city where she was living in some other city of India, again our coinciding times of visits were similar. Or I have myself right now lived in India after leaving US for 9 years. But despite that, this girl who was a good friend when I was in childhood days, because our paths are not merging anymore, even though she was in the same city as me for 9 years, or out of 9 years she also came to the same city once every few years, despite that, because she didn't want to make that effort, it never happened that if 9 times they have visited the city or 5 times they visited the city, I've only visited them once or twice. Most of the time, I didn't visit them. Or if I go and visit her in her city, that works for this friend, but she willingly will not come to visit me in my city. Right? So, this is how life is with different people. Either you coincidentally get merged in the life path with someone, or you intentionally set, and this girl sometimes also intentionally sets also plans to visit someone. So if you're intentionally setting a plan like that, I have also done that when I intentionally go and visit a friend, intentionally go and visit a family. So all these things, when you intentionally do it, you will join life paths with them. When you inadvertently get pulled towards joining life paths with them, that also can happen. And sometimes there are also people who could have merged life paths with you inadvertently, or because of universe putting you in the same city at the same time. But despite that, if people don't want to put the effort, people do not want to set the right intention to be with you, they can't be with you, or they won't be with you. These are the things that can happen in our life. So this is how betrayal and toxic abuse also works. And this is like my level, this is not really abuse at all, this is just how life works. But in this similar life plan with a friend that can unfold with a friend, this is the minor scale thing which unfolds with a friend, because a friend visits us in our life once in a few years only. A friend is not someone who will be involved in our life continuously, unless they are the friends who are living in the same city as you, same building as you are just living close by to each other. There are very few people who have that kind of friendship, whose friends are in the same city, same locality. Maybe you are going to work also in the same direction, and that's how everything coincides with them, and you end up meeting them once a year or a couple of times in a year. Those are some lucky people who do that in this world. But there are others who do not have these kind of friendships or even family relationships too. Because while with friendships it can be occasional, and with family most of the time it should be that, ideally, that whoever family you have, you should have a more closer bonding ideally with your families, especially in a large country like India, where people have like at least 50-60 cousins who they could be related to, or other second cousins and other people that they know in their life. In a country like India, ideally you should be meeting up with your family much more oftener than you should be meeting with your friends. But despite that, it sometimes doesn't unfold, especially when these same minor level dynamics that I spoke about friendships, starts also unfolding with your family life. And all of this is dependent essentially on your soul contract with them. But also, apart from your soul contract with someone, if say at the material practical level and emotional level they are not emotionally tied to you, or you are not emotionally tied to them, or both sides are not that emotionally attached to each other, then this kind of detachment happens in friendships and any relationship. And this is where, if you are attached more to someone else and the other person is not that emotionally attached to you, or for them you are not as much of a priority as you are for them, that is when it leads to relationship imbalance, relationship conflict, relationship fracturing, and also sometimes betrayal trauma or toxic abuse related to narcissistic abuse. And to top all of this is just if you are interacting with someone who is normally like other social personalities. But there are also a subgroup and subtype of people who have this trait called antisocial personality disorder. And these subtype of people, they are very rare in the world, and they should be rare, because if the whole world had a bunch of people with antisocial personality traits, then no relationship would sustain in our life. So these particular subgroup of people who are the antisocial personalities, they are the kind who will never want to build relationships with others. Their relationships keep together simply because others value them more than they value the other people in their life. Their relationships go on for a long time because others are putting the efforts in their life to maintain a social relationship with them, while they do not put that effort. And some people have come with good karma from their previous life or some life, where because they came with some good karma and blessings, they might have many people in their friends group, social circle, who love them, are attached to them, who care for them deeply. But because these people are antisocial personalities, and because their emotional side has been killed due to certain reasons, it could be physical reasons, biological reasons, spiritual reasons, whatever is the reason why their emotional attachment is not at a balanced level with other human beings, they fail to balance and align with humans. They fail to see the purpose of both the good and the bad of their life, and end up only seeing bad in many things, or only pursuing the darkness and the darkest aspects of many things in life. And this is where they become like, I have not watched antisocial personality movies, but I have watched some stories of these type of personalities. Like, this is when they become the Ted Bundys, Charles Manson, the religious cult leaders in US who form these cults. The story in Game of Thrones, which was resembling some of these religious cult leaders' stories, was the story of Craster's Creep or something. I'm forgetting, in the Night's Watch, where the Night's Watch used to go into this Craster's place, where there was no male child. All the male child were killed. He was having incestuous relationship with his wives. Those wives were also possibly sleeping with the men in the tower. But essentially, all the male children were getting killed because he had some mental illness going on with him, and he was an antisocial personality. But the thing is, most of the time, even though he is this kind of antisocial personalities continue on for many years without anyone stopping them, without anyone realizing the extent of their abuse. Or even if people realize the extent of their abuse, sometimes people start enabling the extent of the abuse that was going on. Like, in the whole story, there are all these brave men who are watching this tower, but none of these brave men had the bravery to end what Craster was doing to his daughters and granddaughters, or whatever crap he was doing. None of them had the courage to end that. Only Sam was the one who ran away with one of the daughters, right? But other than Sam, none of the characters had the bravery to end what he was doing, because all of them, what were they wanted, because they were lonely, they wanted women. He was providing them women, so all of them kept enabling the abuse of all these women, right? So imagine the amount of betrayal trauma these women are feeling. And this is a fictional story, but even though it's a fictional story in Game of Thrones, the same fictional story has a realistic basis on the plight of many women who get abused like this, whether it is a cult that is doing it, whether they become thrown into prostitution, whether some other betrayal trauma happened and they ran away from their home. Because see, the betrayal trauma was there in the men who were watching the tower, and betrayal trauma was there in the women who were being abused for sexual reasons, sexual and other perverted reasons. But now, and this is why they were placed also in contact with each other. But out of hundreds of soldiers who were guarding that tower, out of the hundreds, and there were only maybe like 20 women who were in this cult. Imagine the power also they had, 100 men versus only 20 women. Even then they couldn't end this cruelty of these women. So this is how imbalance gets created in the world. Because, and God also knew, that's why there were hundreds of women, not even 100 men. There might have been more than 100 men who were guarding that tower. But this is how the God also knew that most of these men will fail, because many of these men were truly not innocent. They were sent to the tower as a punishment for something they had done illegally, or violation wise. They might have themselves been rapists and other kinds of thieves, and different kinds of criminals were only usually sent to the tower. Either different kinds of criminals were sent, or really poor people were sent, or those whose fathers wanted to keep them away from their inheritance. These kind of people were being sent in this tower to work there, right, and dedicate their lives away from a normal family life. Now, out of that, God also knows that out of the hundreds of men who would be going there, there will be many who will fail this test and fail to have the empathy that came into the soul of Sam. he was the only one who felt the empathy, felt the courage, had the courage, and he truly became a courageous person to leave this, take her with him when she was pregnant. Right? Most of them otherwise failed in that story to rise to the purpose that was possible for them after they met these women who were as abused as possibly these men, but they couldn't see beyond their own physical needs, or they couldn't see beyond their own misery to help someone else. Because Sam also didn't have a good life, but he was able to see beyond his misery to help the girl who was Craster's daughter or granddaughter, right? I'm forgetting the characters' names because it's been a while since I read these books and watched the series, but the whole point of this is how it unfolds in real life with men and women too. You have a chance, you have an opportunity to rise up to the occasion, to see beyond your misery, to help each other. And even that girl helped Sam in some ways. If she hadn't helped Sam, Sam would have stayed like these grouchy old men and become completely like women deprived, soul deprived soul living in that tower. And though in the Game of Thrones there is this night walkers who come and attack them and all that, who are really dark souls, right? The thing is, the people in the dark tower were watchtowers were also equally dark souls. That's why it was a fight of dark versus dark. It wasn't a fight of light. Even though the book series is called Song of Ice and Fire, it wasn't a fight between fire at all. It was between song of two different kinds of ice meaning and in my perspective of how I'm describing the ice here, the ice was the darkness within the soul of the men who were watching in the watchtower, as well as the darkness in these night walkers. The night walkers were the greatest evil. That's why they were eventually they died, or they were extinguished, or whatever the book is driving towards. But even though they are the souls that are the darkest souls, it doesn't mean that the people who were in the watchtower were absolved of their darkness simply because they were the opposite side. Only those could have been absolved, like Jon Snow or Sam. Jon Snow, because he was betrayed even more by all his friends, and he was also an innocent person. He was not a criminal unlike most of the others, or he had also some birthrights which would have given him something else to do if he had known about his birthrights, right? So his destiny put him there, and he still stayed a little bit clearer than other men. That's why he was also getting betrayed, right, in the story. Otherwise so many men wouldn't have betrayed him in the story, even though the depth of why he was betrayed was never explored in the books yet. But there was a reason behind that, which has not yet been revealed in the rest of the story, that hasn't been written yet, or is still in the process of being written. But this is how life is. Many of our stories are in the process of writing as long as we are alive. Even after being stabbed, when Jon Snow is alive, he is still alive because his story is yet to be written and unfold completely in a way it is supposed to unfold, right? That's why he still was alive at the end of the book in which he was stabbed. And then and spoiler, I should have written spoiler alert for those who haven't yet watched the series or read the book, but this book and series been at least a few decades old, some of them. I hope by now everyone knows this storyline of this book. That's why I'm mentioning it. And this is how betrayal traumas are there in people's lives, where people will betray you, but how you get out of the betrayal, what you do after you have been betrayed, determines the life path journey. Because this girl and Sam, when they met, the girl also could have become very bitter. The girl could have decided to sacrifice her child, but she didn't want to sacrifice her child because she had this wish to not sacrifice her child, unlike her sisters and mothers or aunts, whoever had sacrificed their children. She didn't wish that. She didn't want that same life for her child. That's why also she was brave enough to move away from this dark situation and decide to move away from this darkness, which everyone else accepted around her, but she didn't want to accept it. Sam also didn't want to accept it. That's why they were able to move away from the situation, because they both set the intention of making a change that no one else was ready to make. And despite both of them being victims, both of them decided to be braver than the circumstances that led to their victimhood. And after that, whether they had a great life, so far in the storyline we see they have a good enough life. We don't know whether they will eventually have a great life together. Why? Because again, this is how life is. You don't know what will unfold next for you, but at every given moment, the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your intentions and actions and choices, and which is what karma is. And this is a fictional story again, but again, even though it's a fictional story, its basis, the reason why it resonates so much for so many people, is because a fictional story also can have very realistic elements in them that is universal to the misery of other people like them. And that's why when someone is going through any betrayal trauma at the level of Sam, at the level of this girl, at the level of the other videos that I have given, what you do after those betrayals determines the quality of your life. But sometimes when you are betrayed, sometimes you don't even know that why you were being betrayed. That's why I made the previous videos where I have put the possibility that sometimes these children are betrayed because they're not the biological children of the family. Sometimes they are betrayed because there are some monetary reasons going on. Sometimes they are betrayed because some mentally ill person was involved in their life. Like this Craster was a mentally ill person and socially ill person. There before Craster, there could have been someone who was operating a prostitute like place before Craster, but he was only operating in the exploitation of women front, or providing men supply of women. That's all that person might have done. But the Craster person went one degree beyond just some social illness of exploiting women, because exploiting women for sex is a social illness that needs to change. It can only change when men are deciding that sex is not the only important thing in life. And Sam decided that. That's why he was willing to even take the baby of someone else. He's not the biological father also of this baby, but he was still willing to do that for this baby. And similarly, and so sometimes, and here in his case, even though he is not the biological father, he is one of the persons who, after having faced some betrayal trauma in his past from his own father, he is someone who knows how to become a better father as a result of that. That's why he is even ready to be a father to another child who is not his biological child, right? Whereas sometimes even biological parents do these betrayal to their own kids. Sometimes the purpose of a person like Sam, who experienced betrayal traumas from their parental family, happens because or in one of the previous videos I've mentioned this guy Trey, who was getting betrayed by his own family. Possibly, we don't know from the story that is narrated whether he's getting betrayed by, but my intuition says that the boy Trey was getting betrayed by his family, and the reasons for them doing this betrayal to him could be multiple, one or multiple reasons. So likewise for this boy like Trey also, who was betrayed like that by his family, for him also this is the life purpose. What he does from this betrayal, does he become a person like Sam, or does he become more of a betrayer like the other people who stabbed Jon Snow? What does he become? Because he has a choice. He can become a Jon Snow, he can become a Sam, he can become the people who stabbed Jon Snow. Who do you want to become is up to you. That is the free will of living life on earth. But the more you become like Sam, the more you are like Jon Snow. With Sam, he wanted a family. He always desired for a good family connection that he never got. In fact, for him, what happened then? The betrayal of his family led him to find a new family. So if he hadn't been betrayed by his family, he would never have found the silver lining of meeting this girl, falling in love with this girl, meeting this baby whom he wanted to father. All this potential that was there inside of him to take care of a woman, to take care of a child, all this potential didn't come up until he went there. So for him, his betrayal also turned into something positive, and which is where when people say to surrender to God, to try to find the good in the or the silver lining in your bad, this is how a silver lining unfolds for someone. And Sam's silver lining didn't come the day he first went to that tower, right? Sam's pain and suffering also didn't go away until he went to the tower or after he left the tower. He had a lot of painful circumstances before he went there and after he left there. But what changed, the silver lining is not that now he doesn't have to suffer it alone anymore. He found this woman and he found this son with whom he can jointly share the burdens. He wanted to find that in his friends, but because in his friendship circle in the tower, and Jon Snow also wanted to find it with his friends, but both of them, their destiny was not to find it with these friends. So then again there's that second silver lining. God knows that some of these men will betray, some of these men will not betray. The ones who didn't betray, they then can have the potential to become best friends with Jon Snow in the future, when he becomes the ruler or partial ruler of part of the kingdom, right? And none of them knew he could be a future ruler somewhere. But just because they didn't know he could be a future ruler somewhere, or he had a claim to a throne somewhere, that doesn't determine. That part will always be hidden from sight by everyone. But that's why even Sam and Jon's friendship that develops in this story develops because of their mutual affinity towards each other, understanding of each other's situation, liking for each other, ability to be loyal to each other, right? So this is how life unfolds for any of us. When we meet another soul, we have a potential to become best friends, but whether we will actually become best friends depends on what your traumas did to you, what kind of soul you chose to become out of those traumas, and then based on that your future will also unfold. Because Jon Snow had this claim to the throne and other life purposes too, that's why when he was even stabbed by so many people, he still managed to stay alive, which was a miracle, which people will think it's a fictional story. That's why he was able to stay alive. People can think the same thing about Jesus also. When Jesus died and he was resurrected, they can again still think that it is a fictional tale or mythical tale or religious tale, and it's not the reality. But life is exactly like that for many people who go through sometimes near-death experiences. There are many people who have experienced these near-death experiences too in the modern world, where they have died, they have gone to near-death, they have been in coma for many years or months, and then they have also revived from it, but only because they had a life purpose related to something that was supposed to unfold for them, a life purpose which wouldn't have unfolded if the soul contract with everyone had passed away. Like Jon Snow would have died that day if, say, there wasn't a higher purpose for him to come back. Same way, if Sam ran away and after that Sam's higher purpose is to have a good life with this girl, then only he will get that life, otherwise he won't. Again, this is a fictional story, but I'm telling it in their language because it's easier to understand. We've all watched this story or read the book, that's why I'm telling it from their angle. But this is how it unfolds for any of us. This boy Trey, based on the betrayal he faced in this family, first he does have to though realize that he was getting betrayed. If he doesn't realize, if he doesn't blame, and if he doesn't figure out who he should ascribe this training of this, because I have potentially put in that video that this boy who was getting accused to be a pervert because his younger sister's underclothes were found in his room. Now that boy, when his his parents initially accused him in front of all his friends that he is a pervert, First of all, if you were really good, caring, loving parents, you wouldn't accuse a child and embarrass a child, and especially a teenager, in front of your friends, unless you have seen this child being incorrigible. Then maybe you would do that. But if the first instance someone does something wrong, people will always try to handle it within the family. So this was the first instance when something wrong had turned up, apparently, from how the story is narrated. And then later on they also find out he was actually innocent, because they saw that the dog was taking away the clothes and hiding it in this Trey's room. Now most of the time dogs can take away other people's clothes, but they will not, very rarely will a dog be very specific in going and hiding in one person's room. If the dog is just a messy and untrained dog, it will take clothes, it will chew the clothes and strew it all around the home. But the fact that it was getting put only in the son's room shows that someone had trained the dog to do this, to embarrass Trey. So whoever was embarrassing Trey, if Trey never finds this out, yes, some other situation can unfold in his life and he may leave this family, just like Sam had to leave his family. Things like that can unfold with this Trey guy. But if he does sometimes figure out who did it, it will make it easier for him to understand why he had this difficult childhood, because then behind those reasons, so if he is the reasoning sort who wants to find out why this was happening to him, he can find out that someone was doing this, maybe because he was not biologically related. He can find out that someone was doing it because there were some karmic reasons that he had to learn this lesson of betrayal from these people. He can eventually find out even the silver lining or higher purpose of his experience with this family. It was like how Sam had a higher purpose of saving this girl and the child that was not his. Same way, or becoming good friends with Jon Snow, all these higher purposes of Sam wouldn't have unfolded if he hadn't been betrayed to go to the tower. Same way, for the Stray also, certain darkness that unfolded in his life will and can lead to some brighter and better and silver lining related days, when he accepts that within the darkness was also some good involved. Because within this darkness also, if he from this manages to conquer the bullying that was going on socially for him, that will be a silver lining for him. If he manages to conquer the bullying, if out of the result of him being bullied, someone else gets empathetic towards them and understands that the bullying he was going through was unfair, that would be a silver lining. If his sisters, who are not his possibly biological siblings, understand as a result of this how much he is being discriminated against and they are privileged, and as a result they start becoming kinder towards him, that again could be a silver lining. So what his silver lining will be is not dependent on him completely also. What his silver lining will be is actually dependent also on the people who he meets in his life as a consequence of all these things that were happening to him, and partly because of the intentions he sets. Because if he understands that everything will be good, then he's doesn't remain in the darkness of the bullying, doesn't remain in the darkness of being unfairly mistreated, and he can transcend that and get out of the darkness. But in order for him to get out of the darkness also, everything isn't Trey's effort. Some of the things that will lead to Trey to get out of this darkness has to come from outside sources other than Trey. Same way with Sam. Sam goes there, say Sam was the kindest person, wants to help this girl, but if this girl didn't want to run with him or didn't want him to raise the baby, then again, even though that could have been a future potential silver lining for Sam, but if the girl didn't do that and didn't run away with him, didn't allow him to be the father to her child, then that silver lining wouldn't have unfolded for the girl also and him as well. That path and timeline would have just collapsed for them and wouldn't have come up again, because then that baby would have had met the same fate as the other babies, and this woman also would have met the same fate as her other sisters and siblings and other women in Craster's Creek. So does that make sense? I said Craster's creep, but I think it's Craster's keep, right? Anyway, but he was a creepy old man, so that's why I said that, even though it was a mistake. But this is also the truth, that there's no mistake. And even though the silver lining of Sam and this girl having a life together, that potential life wouldn't have unfolded for them in that life if she didn't say yes to running with him, or if he didn't approach her to run to and take her with him. If he hadn't taken that initiative, both of them had to take some initiative together. And if either one or both didn't take that initiative, that silver lining path and timeline would have fallen away. But then some other silver lining could happen if they still had intention that something good should happen, if they still kept their faith that about certain things, and if they still met certain criterias that God uses to give these silver linings to people. I hope that makes sense. Or if they still held this faith, that I'm posting a link with this, where this guy is talking about how we have to see the good in the bad situation also, or accept that there is something good in the situation, or at the very least, even if we don't see the good happening in the bad we are experiencing currently, if we let go of the victimhood of the bad that is happening, or let go of the sadness, grief, and other darker emotions that come within us when something bad is happening, if we start doing all these things, then what happens is, the more you let go of the darkness, the more you let go of the power of the darkness having a hold over you, the more you try to find the light within the darkness that you are experiencing, the more you try to see the silver lining that right now may not be visible to you but might be there in the future, like you're hazily seeing a silver lining. All these steps slowly open the door to the light out of the darkness you're facing in your life. For Sam also to take this decision to be with this girl, it didn't happen in one day, and that's why she was pregnant also for a few months, right? But that decision for him to help this girl, that decision to become a different person than what everyone else is in this tower, all the night's watch people were a particular men type, but Sam was very different from that man type who was usually there in the tower. Same way with Jon Snow, both of them were slightly different from the typical men who were there. It's not that they weren't similar to them, they were also similar to them, but yet slightly different. And because they were able to maintain that slight difference, every degree of slight difference you maintain in your darkness ends up helping you eventually in the future, like a butterfly effect of that darkness eventually opening slightly, because the more you are closing the dark paths and slowly opening and seeing the goodness in it, even if not able to see clearly yet the goodness, but taking the steps towards the goodness also, then slowly opens the door to some real silver lining and some real greater good, eventually manifesting as a butterfly effect in your life. I hope this makes sense, and if you have any questions, please drop me a comment. Thank you.